Well, hey, everybody, this is the podcast / vlog here called Creatives Who Thrive. I'm your host, Devin Berryhill, and I'm really excited to bring on our guest today, someone who I've known since I've been a child, growing up in church up in Costa Mesa, California, someone who's been an excellent example of a creative, a musician, and someone who has perennially been a leader in Christian music, worship music, but just as a guitar player, someone who's been groundbreaking on so many different levels. And I'm excited to talk about, he's got a new album out called City Light that we'll talk about towards the end of the program there. But today, I really want to just say I'm super stoked to have you here. John, welcome to the show. But first, I want to tell you about a special guitar amplifier company called Risen Guitar Amps. There was a guy named Bob Rizzi who developed Risen amplifiers back in the 1960s. But before that, he worked for a guy named Leo Fender in Fullerton, California. Leo, along with Bob, George Fullerton, and many others, developed some of the more classic amps that we know today. When Leo Fender sold Fender guitars and amplifiers to CBS, Bob went to go work for Rickenbacker. He developed amps that even Led Zeppelin used on their first tour here in the United States. There's been many musicians that have played on the Risen amplifiers, including Joe Walsh, Slash from Guns N' Roses, Glenn Campbell, and now the Tourmalines. We're excited that we're going to be coming out with this year in 2021 into 2022, the new Surfmaster. And check out their website. Go to risenamplifiers.com.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good. It's good to see you again. And
you have been in music since really the late 60s, early 70s, all the way to today, being a guitarist, band leader, arranger, recording artist, worship leader, pastor. You've done so many things. I wonder if you could just give us kind of the Reader's Digest version of your story, where you started. I looked in your bio and you talk about as a teenager learning every guitar solo you could get your ears on. So tell us a little bit your story.
Born in Ohio, moved out to California when I was 7. My dad got a job offer. And so we came out here in 62. 3 years later, or a couple of years, 2 years later in 64, I was 10 years old. It's when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan. Mm-hmm. And so myself, along with probably, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands other preteens, picked up the guitar and I dove in. A bunch of my friends picked up the guitar, and I had drummer friends, bass player friends. We just played and played and played. And I remember I had so many fears as a young guy. I mean, we're talking nightmares, weird stuff. I don't want to get into that. This isn't that type podcast, but social fears too, which made me dive into the guitar. So anyway, I was 15 years old and been playing for 5 years. So I was still a, teenager little guy. And a friend of mine, his name's Alex McDougall. He and his family and his brother Bo, they were like a second family to me, kind of. And there was a Billy Graham crusade in Orange County in 69. And Al went and he received Jesus as his personal Lord and Savior. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't even know what a Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were. I knew nothing about the Bible. But he was changed and he stopped playing drums, because I found out later he didn't think a Christian could play drums at that time. I mean, he was going through things. So anyway, he invited me to Calvary Chapel. And I didn't have anything against God. I just never thought about him. I just thought, why? Why do you want to go to a church? I mean, so anyway, we went. And by the way, we went in a 58 or 57, 59 orange hearse, because back then there were no synthesizers. So a Hammond B3 player, that's what he used to carry his Hammond B3 around, was a hearse. So we took about 4 guys to get that out. It's very
with
heavy.
The Leslie and everything.
everything. So we climbed into the hearse and went to Calvary, and I received the Lord. Okay, so I didn't play in front of people for 2 years after that. It was just too much of a ego thing, and it was just weird. I just wanted to read the Bible. So after that, at the end of a couple of years, I got in this band and played in some bands. The first band that I got in that did a record, it was a group called The Way. And I got in the group 6 months before they did their first album. I moved out when I was 18 years old from my parents' house. And when you're not married, I mean, I spent $15 a month on food. Rent was my portion was $29 a month. And I was in this band. The way I got in as the bass player. I never played bass before in my life, but they did like these acoustic country songs, kind of like America or a little bit of Crosby, Stills and Nash. And later I picked up the electric, and another guy played electric, and it was kind of Allman Brothers type stuff. Anyway, I literally had no expenses. And I remember the albums that we did were part of a record label called Maranatha Music. And there were a lot of bands back then. And I remember we got our taxes done as a band every year. And every year we were like we had no taxes because we didn't make like anything hardly. And so after that group, that was about 4.5 years. I got in a group called Parable, which is where I met my wife. And we split everything up evenly in the band. You know, it's just how it was and how we rolled, and including album royalties, because that band had a couple albums as well through the Maranatha Music label. And I remember the best financial year in that band, it came out, and up to that point, that's the most I ever made. It came out to $330 a month each. And honestly, I didn't blink. I mean, I literally didn't need more than that. And I never even thought about it. So after that band, I got in a group. I started playing with this guy named Benny Hester. And it was kind of more the same. They were absolutely incredible guys to be with. They were so fun. And Benny was a really good communicator. I mean, the other bands were great too, but in terms of being in them, it was an honor to do it. What we were doing, they were contemporary Christian music bands, and all the places we went were, you know, mandatory high school assemblies and college campuses and different venues. It was awesome. But playing with Benny, it was the first or second, I think the first year is when I got married to my wife, Lisa, who was in the group Parable. That's where we got to know each other. And then here I am playing with Benny. And at that time, there were these Night of Joys at Disneyland.
Yeah.
Okay. And the first 2 years, it was run by this guy named Jimmy, who we all knew. And then after that, Disneyland took it over. But he was trying to help Benny out financially at the time. And he just told me, he said, look, I'll let you play Disneyland and I'll pay you this much if you treat your band like a backup band and you pay each player this much. He was just trying to help Benny financially. So Benny implemented that new plan, which blew the minds of some of the musicians because we were all kind of one for all and all for one up to that point. But that's okay. Things change.
Sure.
And I get that. Everybody got that. It just was time to change. And so anyway, I was playing with Benny about 2 or 3 times a month that time. And he was paying me $100 every time we played. And I was teaching, we were married at this time, and I was teaching guitar lessons. I had up to 60 students, not at one time, but all totaled in the year and a half or year I was teaching.
Wow.
And I was also writing jingles, with radio jingles for these different local companies, and some Christian companies and restaurants and things like this. And I did that because Benny used to write jingles and have a jingle company years before. And it just got me interested in it. Honestly, it was absolutely a blast to write jingles.
Sure.
I don't know, this might sound strange, but one of the most fulfilling things was writing a check to the musicians who came and played for those 4 hours. I loved it. Anyway, it was so fun. And I knew that the Lord had something for my wife and I to do that was different than what we were doing at the time. We were doing great in terms of just, getting through life. The first year and a half of our marriage, it was peaceful. It was a blessing. It was full of joy and very full. It was awesome. But there's this one point where my wife and I were asked to lead worship at a retreat in Arizona. And it was 3 different churches getting together. And we never did that before. I never even thought about it. Never even crossed our minds. And because I just was into playing electric guitar. And
sure.
Anyway, so we went. I was with Benny in Waco, Texas for a week. All the while, I knew I was supposed to leave the group because there was something else for my wife and I to do that I didn't know what it was at that time. And my wife flew out in a little 4-seater plane with Pastor Chuck from Orange County. And I flew out from Waco and we rendezvoused. And so Friday night, we led the music before Chuck spoke. And I didn't have chords in front of me. I mean, at that time, it was like 3 chords, 1, 4, and 5 chords and a couple of relative minors. I mean, it was like, there wasn't a song we played where I couldn't just hear where it went, so we just led songs. And then the next morning we did the same thing. Chuck spoke. Then at lunch, we had lunch. And after lunch, Chuck was going back to Orange County. So I asked one of the pastors there, I said, well, what's going on tonight? And he said, well, you guys. And I said, are you going to speak? He goes, no. I said, okay. So I went to our cabin. I fell on my knees and I thought, what are we going to do? We didn't have anything prepared. I mean, we were in bands together, in Parable together, and we knew how to play. And she was is a singer still, but we didn't have anything worked up. So anyway, That night, it was a 2.5-hour meeting. It was absolutely such an intense, wonderful time of ministry, of all different kinds of things happen at worship. And so it wasn't too long after that we were invited down to San Diego to be a part of the ministry at Horizon Christian Fellowship, Mike MacIntosh.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was called Calvary Chapel San Diego. And we knew Mike because he married us. And those bands that I said we were on the Maranatha music label, Mike was still on staff as one of the assistant pastors at Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa, pastoring Maranatha music. So that's when I first met Mike, was there and got to know Mike. And so, we just started leading in worship then. And from there, went to Calvary Costa Mesa for about 11 years. It was about 4.5 years at Horizon, 11 years at Calvary Costa Mesa. And then in 96, we moved down here to San Diego County and part of Maranatha Chapel. And they haven't changed the locks on me yet. So I'm still there. So that's, obviously other things happen, but that's basically it,
That's great. And you've kind of answered a number of my questions. One of them was, what point did you start deriving income from your creative work? And you pretty much answered that by, you just, when you were single, there was a certain type of lifestyle, paying $29 a month in rent and $33 in food or whatever it was a month. And that's 15. Yeah. That's a common story with some of the other folks I've interviewed so far for the podcast is, when you're a single person, you have a lot more time to put into your craft, right? Developing your chops and writing songs and doing that. And then, as you get older, most of us, we start looking, you want to get married, maybe have a family, and things change. And, the life on the road kind of things, really isn't as attractive, because you want to, you got married because you love the person, you wanted to be with them. You had kids because you wanted to be with your kids. I found it in my own story a little bit, if I can interject, just went through the same thing. I was at the peak of, I was playing with the Cry. If you remember, I was playing with the Cry, and we played at Maranatha Chapel, and Jeremy Camp was playing with us at the same time. And right at that same time, I had my first kid, Jane, in 2000. And, as the Cry was kind of coming to the end of their career at that time, and Jeremy was starting to pick up, and Jeremy asked me to come in at lead guitar for him for a season. And then when he got signed, I could see, it was going to turn into being out 364 out of 65 days, so, those kind of decisions are important. So it makes the creative person kind of look at some other options. Like you had 60 students, guitar students, and you went on staff at Calvary Chapel churches as a worship leader. So you were still involved. But the great thing about your story, John, that I like too, is that all along through it, you've kept up your chops as a guitar player. You've kept writing, you've kept recording, and you've invested in others. Of course, you have two sons that are pretty well known within the worship world, Phil and Evan, which I know both of them, more so Evan, as he's down here in San Diego. And we served together at Horizon for a season as well. So interesting to see how your story, and of course with your wife Lisa, I don't know if you remember this, but Lisa was like my Wednesday night or Thursday night, you call it Sunday school, but it was Thursday night teacher for a season. When I was in 7th grade or something, she was helping out with the junior high, the ministry there. And here you are, so many years later. You've put out a number of albums, either through the Maranatha music label or independent. You've produced for others, including Phil Wickham's first album. You produced that album, was right?
The indie album, yeah, we co-produced. I'd say it co-produced it.
Yeah, and you did a lot of the guitar electric on that, correct?
Yeah, I did did a lot of the electric on it, and they did too as well. But yeah, we just kind of, somebody had an idea, we just handed off. We were sitting there in the room, and sure, yeah, we all did it.
Yeah, because I remember I was hosting the Worship Excellence Conference, the Youth Worship Excellence thing we did at Horizon back in like 2000, 2001. And Phil was supporting that album. And I remember it had Richard Cimino's son. Sean, who's now in Foster the People. Went on. So that was an amazing time to watch a number of the artists, the next generation. You came out of if you want to call it on multiple ways, the analog world of releasing albums, figuratively and literally. Analog tape, kind of the record company, pre-internet, pre-social media time where it was all relational. You're selling albums out of the back of the van. Back then it was Christian bookstores and that kind of thing. And you if you put out something, it had to go through a label for anybody outside of your regional area to hear that album, correct?
Yeah.
So now here you are a number of years later, and you've got a new album out called City Light. And here you are in the digital age with all that social media stuff. You're having to upload your music on Spotify and Pandora and all these other platforms through a TuneCore or a DistroKid maybe. Maybe you can kind of explain that transition, where you were, where you are now, and maybe some wisdom maybe for an artist like yourself who's seasoned but jumping back in a lot of years later.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I went to school, so to speak. I had my goodness. Well, what happened is, you're right. I couldn't just make CDs and, I don't know, just put them on a table somewhere after you play somewhere. I mean, so here's what happened is I started talking to folks, and mostly I started listening to these different YouTubes of these different people your age, whatever, talking about all the different ways to get your music out there today. Mm-hmm. And I made a list of the different companies, whether it's Sound Exchange, Song Trust, the digital distribution company. I have a Christmas album that I did that I put out through CD Baby a number of years ago. CD Baby's been around, one of the longest digital distribution folks. And, what is there? 20, 25 different companies, 50, I don't know. There's a lot, and they're not all the same. And so I had to look at that again. And I just went with CD Baby again. But I had to learn, I had to get back up to speed on BMI. I had to understand. I just thought, man, do I even still have, it's been years, literally years since I've done any of this. Mm-hmm. And I would ask my sons for help. And so I talked to Philip and said, Philip, how do you, and he goes, I don't know. They do all that for me, so he literally, yeah. I knew more. He knew a number of things more than I did, because I started getting excited about Sound Exchange and what they did worldwide, and how they monitor your songs, and how outside of the US they pay artist royalties. Anyway, and I got excited about it. I said, did you hear about Sound Exchange? And so he said, Dad, it's kind of become one of the biggest things in the industry. And I said, oh, okay. And he, so there are definitely things he knew that I didn't know about, but the how-tos, I just had to really dig in and learn how to do it. And so my wife has this saying that she'll say once in a while when it comes to like planting plants or something like that, like in the garden or whatever. You plan for success, and she wants to make sure all her bases are covered. So that's kind of what I did. It took me like probably 3 to 4 months to get up to speed on all this stuff. I mean, really digging in, talking to them. I'd have to call the company, and I'd wait for a call back, and I'd ask questions. And I did that 2 or 3 times to go through questions. And it was such a learning process, but there's great tutorials on YouTube on this. And so what I did is I just got everything listed, all the songs listed, and everything up to speed, and learned all kinds of stuff, like, when you sign up, like, I don't know how the others do it, but on CD Baby, there's 5 different people singing. I'm not a vocalist, which, by the way, all those times leading in worship, my wife was by my side. She's the singer. She was the voice. I could sing, but I always sang like the guy, I just never really was a vocalist. I just, whatever. So we always ministered together, and through all those years.
Mm-hmm.
And but on CD Baby, when in the sign up process, you have to put if there's a featured artist on a song,
right?
And you either put them down as a feature, you either don't put their names down, just at all, don't acknowledge them at all, or you put down a featured artist, or you put them down as a primary artist. Okay, so it's my album, so I'm a primary artist, but I didn't put any of them down as primary artists. I put them as a feature artist. And so if it goes down as a primary artist, then it'll shoot to the top of their Spotify page or their Apple Music page as their latest single release. So if they put out a single, and next week I put out an album with them as a primary artist as well as me, what I put out will kick their single off. No. Yeah, so you got to be careful. And so anyway, I put them all down as a featured artist. And if you put them down as a featured artist, then when you go to their Spotify page, you have to scroll all the way to the bottom where it says this artist can also be heard on. And there's a list of things. Okay. So it's kind of out of sight, out of mind a little bit. But anyway, so in the sign up process with CD Baby, I got an email from them saying, everything's on hold because it looks like you have some famous people on here. We need their approval. So I went, okay. So I was texting everybody, and one of them was Madison Cunningham. Yeah. And so they're family friends, and she sang on the song that I thought she'd be perfect on. She did crazy amazing. And so I texted her and I said, to connect with it. And she texts back and said, well, I have a record label now, so I can't sing on anybody else's record. And so I went, and it's already with disc makers. It's already in process of getting printed up, and it's already been mixed, mastered. So I spent I thought it through, and I thought of ways, okay, it probably just cost me a couple $100 to reissue this and get somebody else to sing it. The mix is pretty much, anyway. So I texted her back right away, and I told her where we are in the process. She texted me back and said, I didn't know. Let me get you connected with the manager. We'll work something out. So we did. And all he asked for was that her name be taken off of as a artist there, so it wouldn't direct people away from her music. And it was, I totally understood it, and it was very nice of them to do that. And so, but as it turned out, when I was talking to CD Baby, the only one that came up on their radar was Philip, because of his following and his record sales and things like this. So anyway, it was a learning process. The whole thing was, and I got it all covered, and I made sure I kept notes and passwords and, all of this, but you just get it out there, and there's other things you can do that I haven't followed up on yet. I do want to say this too, because this is just a weird thing that happened weird meaning unexpected. And, I got to say, it was really fun for a couple of days. We were having a lot of fun with it. Is part of the process when you sign up an album, you have to tell them what the genre is.
Right. Okay.
You can't say various, because this album has literally no direction whatsoever.
Sure. Self-produced.
It's too long to explain how the songs and all that. I just gathered them all. But there's a little country on one song. There's one that's blues. There's blues rock. There's one that has sort of a jazz feel a little bit when it gets to especially the guitar solo, acoustic guitar solo. There's other stuff on there too. So they have a little pull down menu, and you got to pick what's there, or you can't proceed in the sign up process. So I thought, okay, well, the first song really is, bottom line, a blues little intro thing. So I put blues. Second song, kind of a little bit pop, but more blues rock, whatever. So I put that. they give you a place for a subgenre, and I get into all the other styles. For one song, I put world music because of the percussion that was on it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, all that to say, it came out on the day after it came out. Evan texted me a screenshot of Amazon Music that the album was #1 in the blues category on Amazon Music. Nice. And I went, what? Are you kidding me? This is hilarious. And so I don't go to Amazon Music, so I go to Apple Music, and it was #1 in the blues category there.
Fantastic.
So it was #1 for about, what, half a day, 3 hours, 4 hours. And we were just having, then it went down to like 5, 6, then it went down to like 20, then it came back up into the 10s. Then it went down to 30 something. This is after about 3, 4, 5 days. Then it's like totally gone. So, but still, it's just, it was just such a fun thing that happened, and I had a lot of fun with it. So honestly, with this album, I mean, anything could happen any day with anybody's songs, whether it's through YouTube and somebody picks it up, if some company, and also on these digital distributors. And again, I didn't search out the other companies. I'm sure a lot of them have something like this, but with CD Baby, they have what they call a library. You want your song in a library, and it's kind of like, that Music Bed website. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Yeah, there's a number of them out there.
Okay, sure. I'm sure there is. I'm not aware of them all, or haven't got up to speed.
You can purchase like intro music or outro or sound effects I did that for our podcast, little sound effects and stuff. Sure.
Awesome. Yeah, that's okay. Well, CD Baby has their own sort of version of that. And so whether it's through that, whether it's, because of the internet, whether it's somebody in Europe anything could happen, right? Anything. And so you just make sure all your bases are covered. And honestly, I still think the biggest deal, even though it's slow going with everything that's happened in the last year plus in this country, in this world, still the best thing is playing live. I mean, that's where you get your stuff out there the most.
Sure.
But
do you plan on touring this at all, or playing it out in some form?
The short answer is no, I don't plan on it. But if there was a band, and I loved being in a band when I was in a band. I love the working together. I love the synergy that happens, the creative stuff that happens, the encouraging each other. This album took so long because I literally, in fact, on the back of the CD, it says recorded in : the corner. And I'm talking about this corner right here.
Right. I see a little studio
garage.
Back there. Yeah.
It was just me by myself. And
sure.
So, and I'm not on a record label or anything. So there was no time limit. So it took a long time. And so if there was, all that to say, if there was a band that just kind of got together and it just clicked, then yeah, I would. But when I think about doing these songs, I mean, there's some songs on here where there's like 5, 6, 7, 8 tracks of guitars. I mean, some of them are stereo, but the point is I did a lot of layering and a lot of guitar parts, and unless I play to a track with a band, which would be, I don't object to that. I'd rather not, but unless I do that, it'd have to be a band that just got together. Then I'd tour, but I don't have any plans on making that happen. Well,
I found too with the recordings I've done with Pro Tools, as a guitarist, you're someone who could probably play your own bass parts, your rhythm parts, your lead parts. You've got lyrical content, you've got your vocal content, and some of the songs are instrumental too, correct? On the new album.
Yeah, little over half the album's instrumental.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, I found the similar with my latest endeavor with my group, the Tourmaliners, is I pretty much play all the parts myself, recorded all the parts. But yeah, there's 3-4 layers, maybe 5 layers of guitars and maybe some keyboards, adding some atmosphere in there. And to produce that live, and you're finding players who can pick up your style, can pick up your nuances, and then is there a budget to bring in players who can play like you? I mean, basically,
Yeah, no,
it's hard to put all that together and make it, get the support and the venues and the right opportunity. But but I know it's fun as an artist.
I just want to say, your album sounds great, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
I love your album. Such good sounds. And I remember when you first gave it to me, I brought it home. I played it. Lisa was just loving it. And I was too. So awesome job.
Oh man, I'm getting shivers just hearing you guys.
So
play
good.
it.
What great sounds. It was just great.
Well, it's fun to sit down as a musician, as a creative, when you have, like you say, you got your studio right there behind you. I have a similar, you can see kind of my studio monitor right here and my Mac setup. Yeah. And with today's technology, I mean, you can literally just sit, back in the day, I mean, we had to rent a whole studio and it was just this, you had to go somewhere else. Now, what you can do in your house, in your living room or a spare bedroom, is amazing. You can come up with these parts, and if, you don't have to like spend all this money and focus in this pre-production at home kind of thing by yourself with a 4-track or whatever. You can go right to your finished product almost. And if you come up, middle of the night, you get this idea, 2 in the morning, you run in and drop down that guitar line or riff or whatever you're trying to put in there, or groove. And, it's something that may stick and inspire the rest of the song or whatever. And it's really offered creatives such a wonderful palette of tools. And that's why they call it Pro Tools, right? What are you running now? If I can ask, you're not running Pro Tools, right? You're running something else.
No, usually. Actually, there's this guy, he's with the Lord now, and his name was Roby Duke. And he's a singer-songwriter, producer, really good producer. From years ago, and he was telling me about Radar.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah. And so the first time I went to NAMM, it was I was on a mission, so to speak, which motivated me to go. And I was going to check out Radar. And it's the same year that Roland came out with their 16-track keyboard. Where you could actually, it had a CD burner right there, and all these effects in it. And I went to their booth, which was humongous, and saw their presentation, which was impressive with capital letters. It sounded so crazy good. But Roby said, if you get Radar, it's going to last for years. If you get this, it'll be a toy in a year. And that was his opinion, of course, but I followed his opinion, and I got one of the first Radar units. It's been upgraded. All the upgrades that they offer for this particular model, I've gotten every one of them. And it's a Radar 24, and it works. Basically, it works exactly like a 2-inch tape machine, like exactly, except it has this whole bank of dedicated buttons for digital editing. So there's no effects in it or anything like that. So I have an Avalon 737 here, and I have a Mackie 32.8 just for monitoring because I got it for free years ago. And I just use it for monitoring. I go through the Avalon 737, and then I take it to a grown-up studio for mixing, and Mark Suhonen mixed it. And
great, I know Mark.
Yeah, and it was really like super good working with him because he'd mix a song, he'd send it to me, I'd take notes, and then I would take notes. I'd come back and I go, okay, I want this change. And I was like riding shotgun. So I was like there with him, mixing everything with like doing all the tweaking. And we went way over the hours that we originally thought, but it was exactly the kind of situation I was looking for. And then and this kind of goes back a little bit to what I said about working in a band, the creative stuff. There's some parts on some of these songs that he did stuff with a few things that I did not expect. And it just made the song. And so it was super good working with him. There's no way I could have done it, mixed it like that on Radar. So that's how I record, and it's worked out pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, these days, if you can get your basic tracks as stems, like a WAV file of each guitar part, and then like that's what I do for the Tourmaline stuff that I do now. Instead of mixing myself, I've got a guy named Dan Boss who's been doing my mixes lately. And in fact, he did our Christmas album for us. I record here at home all the basic tracks, but I don't have all the plugins. I don't have all the tube pre's. I don't.
Yeah,
that stuff gives the stereo image, just that next level. He also helps me with mastering, and I can just send it to him, and he'll send me back a mix on an MP3. I'll listen to it and add, it's like, well, yeah, if you could add the guitar and that kind of thing, or some subtle changes. Generally speaking, he's a guitar player, so he understands my music. We're getting a little tech geeky for this podcast, but John, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I know you probably don't. This is part of that whole new digital domain of releasing your music, is doing stuff like this, getting the word out. And I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story, because it's inspiring. I mean, I've been inspired by your story, and I know a lot of people appreciate you as an artist and will love to see you share just some intimate details about the process and what you've done to stay in music as a creative and branching out in so many different aspects, but to be still doing it, after all these years, and having the courage to put out an album even after many years. Because I know a lot of artists who back in the day, they used to be this, and it's like today, it's like, I think I know there is a market for seasoned players. I mean, I'm experiencing it now. I'm 53, I'm not in my 20s, making, I'm not in that, 18 to 25-year-old thing. I haven't been there for years, but I'm finding that with the digital domain, there are small niche markets that are plenty big enough that you can kind of be a big fish in a small pond, if you will, and release music. And somebody who was a fan of yours back in 1973 can rediscover you in 2021 on Spotify, and they may be in Argentina now, doing something.
Yeah. Well, part of this too was, I was watching YouTube, and some millennial was giving their input, and they were saying you should get a website. And I had my age guys saying, you don't need a website. There's Facebook and all this. But I followed the young person's advice, and I got this website and a web store and all that. And then this other guy said, got to get on Instagram. And my wife's on Instagram. I've never been. And so I did, and she helped. And I asked Odin, he's a friend. He used to be in those
Odin
early
Fong.
groups and stuff.
Yeah,
Odin Fong. And he's got like 7 Facebook sites. They're all mainly dedicated to prayer and things like this. But anyway, so I said, hey, Odin, I texted him. I said, do you think you could, get the word out? The album's coming out in about a week. He goes, I'd love to tell people about your album. Mm-hmm. So he puts a thing out there, and he gets 450 responses on Facebook. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll sign up on Facebook. So I did this Facebook thing that's I think it's called John Wickham Music. because I dedicated it just to the album. All I want to do is get the album out there. And honestly, I've been moved twice, almost pretty much to the point of tears at some of the people that I've reconnected with. I just thought, I haven't talked to them or connected with them in like close to 40 years. And it's been so incredible, so fulfilling, and such a blessing to reconnect with some of these people. And so I'd encourage everybody, it's part of like planning for success. Just get the word out, take advantage of all these things, and just let it do what it's going to do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to do, before we go, I want to do two more things. One, I've got a final question, and then I want to talk about how they can find your music, find your website, maybe connect with you. I noticed the last question, or the second to last question, is if you today would go back to your 20-year-old self and give your 20-year-old self a piece of advice regarding your creative endeavors, what would that be?
Well, wow. I just say this, and I'll try and make this answer like a 10-second or 15-second answer. You know that what people say, and we've been told all our lives about play what's best for the song. Okay. Yeah. I know that's been said millions of times. I didn't get that when I was I didn't. And a lot of people in their teens and 20s do get it. I understood it because I understand English, but I also, I just feel like I've grown so much. So I guess my answer is I just wish what I knew now and the way I look at things now, I wish I could look at them, wish I looked at them that way back then. And I was very narrow in my playing back then. And I guess it'd be to just broaden out your appreciation for more, and but in terms of business wise, I wouldn't have changed a thing, because the direction we went, it's not like like my wife and I chose to go into worship or to be on staff at churches. We never even thought of doing that. It just came. And I look back and we're pretty blown away at how God's led and provided. And, so I wouldn't know what to tell myself then, but I would say, I wish I had a more broader appreciation for all kinds of styles and playing, and could really look at a song and play what's best for the song like I do now back then. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's huge. Yeah, because I mean, when we first start playing, most of us, as kids, we get into this because we want to be little rock stars. So we're inspired by, I mean, you saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. I mean, I can't tell you how many rockumentaries I've seen where, everybody from Tom Petty to Roger McGuinn to David Crosby. I mean, all those guys in the Laurel Canyon scene. I mean, every single one of them in that Echo in the Canyon movie. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
The Jacob Dylan. I mean, every story was, well, I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. Well, I saw the Beatles on, Brian Wilson even, was impacted heavily. And they were even the Beach Boys were successful, relatively successful with a couple albums before 64 when that happened. So, we were all kind of brought into, hey, I want to do it because I saw somebody else do it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember as a child growing up, you were contemporary with my dad, and we lost your photo there. Oh, there you go. I remember seeing, my dad's band. He was playing with, I think it was Love Song to start, believe it or not. Jay Truex, the bass player, had taken a hiatus for I don't know what it was, 3 to 6 month period. And my dad played with Chuck Girard, who was the lead singer of that, that group, of course. Chuck Girard had played on the Safaris albums in '66. He was a session vocalist towards the end. Yeah. And so he was, Chuck had sang on Little Honda.
I knew that first year. Yeah.
And the Castells and all that. And so my dad had that when Love Song needed a bass player, Chuck was like, hey, you want Bob, I know you're a guitarist, but you want to play bass. We need somebody to go on tour. And I remember touring with Love Song as a kid. When I was 5 or 6 years old, we went to Hawaii, did a tour over there. We did a number of dates. And that for me, I mean, I was that impression on me was just, it was like my Ed Sullivan Beatle moment. Seeing you, and of course they played with you guys in the Way. And then later, as I got into junior high, I saw a Parable probably 1,000 times, I think. Seemed like every outreach that Calvary Chapel with Chuck Smith did during that period of time in the late 70s, you guys were there. Easter's.
It's a privilege.
At the Meadows or wherever they were doing something. You guys were playing. I remember watching. My favorite song you guys did was Peter, James, and John with the cowbell. Sure. Yeah. Peter, James, and John.
No.
I got to meet Chuck Butler and Gary Arthur. I served later with Gary before he passed in a couple different endeavors. He would invite me to a church he was leading at the time, and of course you knew him. And we recorded together with Tim Kaufman's studio here. We did some worship songs here down in San Diego, where Gary was a fantastic finger picker, as you are as well, on acoustic, and I would come in
very clean,
very clean stuff. So a lot of history, and you were a big inspiration. In fact, I got to close with this. The one time, the seminal moment for me was watching you bring a Gibson Les Paul into Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa church service on a Sunday morning. Okay. That was a moment for me. I have to just say that to everybody. And hearing you do all those kind of seagull noises on the guitar in worship, to me, that's what inspired me to go on and do what I did. So thank you.
Very cool.
For your inspiration. And if we want to come and get to listen to your music and get to know more about what John Wickham's doing now, how would we find that? What's the website?
Well, it's johnwickham.org. It's that simple, johnwickham.org. And I posted every song on a player there that's on the website. So you can hear the whole album there. There's also a store on the website if you want to go to the little, those 3 lines where you click it? Okay, that's called a burger.
No kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, a guy told me that. It's called a burger icon. The two,
burger.
Like
on
3
things. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So anyway, there's a store there. And then it's on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on everywhere that you could think of. And YouTube, I have a YouTube channel as well. John Wickham Music, I think it's called, because it merged with John Wickham because it's a long story. But and that's about it. So if you want to hear it, it's great to get people to listen, So
thank you, John, for telling us the story. And again, John's new album, City Light, and John Wickham, that's Wickham, last name, John Wickham, and johnwickham.org. And just go listen to this music. I've heard the album. It's wonderful. Pick that up or stream that. And John, we just thank you so much for being with us, and look forward to maybe seeing this music live.
I look forward to it too. We'll see.
All right, brother. Thank you so much.
Okay, God bless you.